Senator Jinggoy Estrada's arrest sparks explosive tension in the Philippine Senate, with Senate President Alan Peter Cayetano clashing against Interior Secretary Jonvic Remulla as authorities execute a high-profile plunder warrant. Security swarms, reporters swarm, and political rivalries ignite, turning the Senate chamber into a battleground of law, power, and accountability. The arrest of Senator Jinggoy Estrada has turned into more than a legal proceeding. It has become another explosive political moment inside the Philippine Senate, where questions of law enforcement, institutional privilege, and political loyalty collided in full public view. On Monday, tension flared between Senate President Alan Peter Cayetano and Interior Secretary Jonvic Remulla as authorities moved to take Estrada into custody over a non-bailable plunder charge tied to the flood control corruption scandal. The confrontation unfolded at the Senate, a place already under intense public scrutiny after recent political standoffs involving lawmakers facing legal pressure. Estrada, one of the country's most recognizable political figures and the son of former President Joseph Estrada, was ordered arrested by the Sandigan over allegations that he received massive kickbacks from flood control projects. Prosecutors have linked the case to alleged irregularities involving hundreds of lions of pesos in public funds. Authorities say the charge against Estrada is plunder, a serious offense that carries no right to bail. The case centers on allegations that he received around 573 million pesos in kickbacks from flood control projects. Estrada has strongly denied the accusation and has framed the case as politically motivated. Before he was taken into custody, Estrada insisted he would face the court process. Estrada said, "I am ready to defend myself before the court, and I will not hide behind the institution to evade the process." That statement was important because the Senate has recently become a symbol of political refuge in the eyes of critics. After Senator Ronald Beto de la Rosa went into hiding amid an international criminal court arrest warrant, public debate intensified over whether powerful officials were being treated differently from ordinary citizens. This time, Interior Secretary Jonvic Remulla made clear that authorities would not allow the Senate Ilding to become a shield from arrest. Remulla personally went to the Senate with CIDG officers to serve the warrant. Remulla said, "We arrested him. I went there personally together with the CIDG. He was read his Miranda rights, and from there, he was brought here to Crane to be processed." That move immediately triggered resistance from Senate President Alan Peter Cayetano, who reportedly raised concerns over the independence of the Senate and the manner in which law enforcement entered the chamber's space to carry out the arrest. For Cayetano, the issue was not only about Estrada, it was about the boundary between the executive branch and the legislative branch. The Senate president's objection reflected a broader concern: whether police forces can enter the Senate and arrest a sitting senator without undermining the dignity and independence of the institution. But Remulla's position was firm. According to reports, he told Cayetano that authorities were executing a valid court warrant, NT, and that no senator could hide behind Senate privilege. Remulla said they will be dealt with fairly, equally, no special privileges. He also said there's no more hiding behind the curtains of the Senate. Those words sharpened the political meaning of the arrest. Remulla was not only talking about Estrada, he was also referring to the recent controversy involving Senator Beto de la Rosa, whose disappearance after an ICC warrant became a major embarrassment for authorities and a flashpoint in the Senate's power struggle. Estrada, meanwhile, appeared emotional but defiant. He rejected the allegations and suggested that the case was connected to political pressure inside the Senate. Estrada said, "I will not yield to threats. I will not be intimidated. I will not be pressured into surrendering my independence of judgment." He also claimed there had been attempts to pressure him politically. Estrada said, "There were many offers to drop the charges against me, but I did not entertain." In them, he added, "What is at stake here is the independence of the Senate." That claim pushed the story beyond the legal case. It raised the question of whether the arrest was simply part of an anti-corruption process or whether it was also linked to the battle for control of the Senate. The timing is politically sensitive. Cayetano recently became Senate president with a slim majority. Estrada is identified with the bloc linked to former President Rodrigo Duterte and Vice President Sara Duterte. With Estrada now detained and Senator Beto de la Rosa in hiding, the numbers inside the Senate may shift at a crucial moment. That matters because the Senate is expected to handle the impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte. Every senator's presence, vote, and political alignment could become decisive. For the Marcos administration, the arrest may be presented as proof that corruption cases will move forward regardless of rank. For the Duterte-aligned bloc, it may be framed as political pressure aimed at weakening their side before major Senate battles. The Office of the Ombudsman has rejected allegations that the charges were politically motivated. Assistant Ombudsman Miko Clavano said, "Walang sinumang pwedeng magdesisyon sa nagalan ng Ombudsman pagdating sa mga nakabinding kaso dahil ang paggawa nito ay may tuturing ding isang uri ni korupsyon." He added, "Matagal nang inimbestigahan ang mga kasong ito. Sa katunayan ay sinasa publiko naman ang bawat hakbang ng proseso." Clavano also warned against mixing criminal accountability with political narratives. Clavano said, "Hindi dapat kailanman pinagahalo ang pananagutan at politika. Kung may mga taong nagtatangkang palabuin ang linya sa pagitan ng dalawang ito, dapat din silang panagutan." For ordinary Filipinos watching the scene unfold, the images were powerful. A senator being escorted from the Senate president confronting the Interior Secretary, and police officers carrying out a warrant inside one of the country's most important institutions. The arrest also comes amid public anger over flood control anomalies. These projects were supposed to protect communities from floods, storms, and climate-related disasters. Instead, investigators say some projects became part of a massive corruption scandal involving public money, contractors, and officials. That is why the case carries emotional weight. This is not only about political survival, it is about public funds, disaster protection, and whether infrastructure money meant for vulnerable Filipinos was stolen or misused. Estrada's camp maintains that he is innocent and that he will answer the charges in court. But the legal road ahead is serious. A non-bailable plunder charge means he can remain detained while the case proceeds, unless the court later finds the evidence of guilt is not strong. The political road is just as serious. Cayetano's confrontation with Remulla signals that the Senate leadership may continue resisting what it sees as executive overreach. Remulla's response signals that law enforcement will not back down when a court warrant is involved. This clash now becomes a defining image of the wider crisis in Philippine politics. The Senate defending its independence, the executive enforcing warrants, the ombudsman insisting on accountability, and powerful political families facing legal pressure. In the end, the question is bigger than Jinggoy Estrada alone. Can the justice system act against powerful officials without being accused of politics? Can the Senate protect its independence without appearing to protect its members from arrest? And can the government convince the public that the flood control scandal is being investigated fairly, not selectively? For now, Estrada is in custody. Remulla is standing by the arrest. Cayetano is defending the Senate's institutional ground, and the country is watching another high-stakes confrontation unfold at the center of power. This is no longer just a plunder case. It is a test of the Philippine justice system, the Senate's authority, and the political balance ahead of even bigger